My name is Ayona Datta. I'm a professor in human geography in University College London. I work mainly in urban geography and digital geography, the dynamics between the urban and the digital, how technologies shape the city and how cities shape how technologies are created. I use a feminist approach to examine the urban transformations, and in particular I have done a lot of work, collaborative work with communities, young women, working class communities and so on. So Kenya, work in Kenya is part of a larger project which is called Regional Futures, and it's funded by the European Research Council. We're looking at comparing metropolitan peripheries in India, Kenya and Mexico. And we're looking at 3 specific cities which are rapidly growing. In Kenya, we're looking at the peripheries of Nairobi, particularly the peripheries that are rapidly urbanizing. And what we have found is that these are peripheries that also require rapid digitalization. By that I mean that land in these peripheries have largely been mapped in paper. And so because they're urbanizing so fast, the state wants to digitize them so that they can actually see properly what is changing. And in doing that sort of work, we realized that much of that peripheral land belongs to tribal communities, to the Maasai. And so there is right now, what we're finding is a tension between urbanization and takeover of indigenous land. And it's a very complex tension because indigenous communities also want to develop and grow and make their livelihoods out of that. And it's a very interesting tension. We haven't yet come upon any results as such, but so far we've had a couple of stakeholder workshops in which we talk with state officials, organizations that are looking at particularly at land justice in Kenya. And we're trying to figure out a way to have proposals where we can suggest ways of digitalization that also is ethically just. I think artificial intelligence has particular dangers, especially in the wrong hands, especially when it's done without ethical parameters. It can create misinformation, disinformation, and we know from Facebook Analytica and what all happened there. But I think also, my feeling is that artificial intelligence is so many different things that it's hard to put everything as artificial intelligence. I think earlier when people were coding and creating algorithms, even that was artificial intelligence. And now when you think about ChatGPT and other generative AI, that's another development of artificial intelligence. So I think we have to be quite precise in what we feel could become a risk in the future and what is the normal course of events, that we always will need coding and algorithms in order to make technology work for us. So I'm skeptical that artificial intelligence is the complete, dangerous thing that's going to take over all humans. But at the same time, I'm very conscious that we definitely need better laws and policies and checks and balances for it not to become a tool of misinformation and disinformation and tool in the hands of kind of rogue states, which can do a lot of damage. Right, the Feminist Toolkit came out because we were working with women in communities, in working class communities, and we really saw that there was a lack of their visibility in digital space. By this, it's not just, I don't mean that they didn't have mobile phones. They all had mobile phones and they were all using WhatsApp. They were all using lots of different types of apps, but they were not writing their own stories. They were not voicing their own experiences. They were unable to, in a way that we can do. We can write blogs, we can put posts in social media. So the idea of the Feminist Toolkit is that we give them a set of tools through which they can author their own stories. And so it was refocus, re-enable, and reimagine, these 3 phases. So kind of refocus on what are the technologies that women in working classes are actually using. And that we found was sometimes Nokia phones, which are not the smartphones. Sometimes it's basic smartphones, so they lack the data, they lack the network capacity. So all of this, and then sometimes the language used in communicating with these mobile phones was often the local language, which is written in the English script. So it sort of gave us the understanding of now what can we do with this? And then re-enable was then to begin to enable them to actually start to speak. So we did Wikipedia editathons for them to be able to write a story about their neighborhood on Wikipedia. We did community podcasts, we did pop-up exhibitions, so lots of different types of strategies. So that gave them kind of, the ability to re-enable them to author their stories. And reimagine is kind of work with them to reimagine a different kind of world. And so that's where the rap song came out of it, where they were really critiquing what they are seeing around them and saying we can imagine a different world. And the Feminist Toolkit is not a formula. It's not, it's not that you have to follow that exactly the way it is. It's more a kind of approach to enabling authorship in digital spaces. And at the end of it, women said that this was the first time they felt that they could actually tell their stories through the community podcast, through the rap song. This was the first time they could tell their stories, that the first time they could reach out to people who maybe like them and who could actually benefit from their experiences and their struggles. So for us, the Feminist Toolkit is more of those strategies, and it could be different in another context, completely different. This is how we imagined it. This also came about from another project in which we were seeing a lot of people not being able to access information in kind of minority communities, working class minority communities. So kind of the pillars of democracy really was basically to understand, first step was access, how much access people have to technologies, then whether they have information. And yesterday we heard the conversation about data and information. So data is not necessarily information. Information means when data has become processed and become meaningful. So access, information, and then knowledge. So from information, how much knowledge they can actually get. And then from knowledge, when you have the right kind of information, then you have better knowledge. So the fourth stage was critical consciousness, that you're actually able to critique things that you see around you, and you're not sort of falling in line with what's been told to you. You're able to question, the ability to question. And then from critical consciousness, then that leads to action. Action means then you can actually do something about it. When you start questioning things, that you kind of try to change the status quo. And then finally from action to empowerment. So we kind of broke down the connection that the Sustainable Development Goal says having ownership of a mobile phone means you're empowered. So we sort of broke down into 6 steps, that it's not necessarily that having a mobile phone access is not equal to empowerment. There are many steps in between that can lead to empowerment. So that was our pathway to digital democracy.